Hello, loyal Chalk Talk viewers. We are back for another episode. I'm Lucas Semb alongside Scott Procter and Matt Morris. And basketball will dominate our show today, both NBA and NCAA. But before we get into today's episode, we want you to know that BVM Sports wants to hear from you. Tell us how we're doing by taking a quick survey about our sports coverage. You can find the survey by visiting any of our social media profiles on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or by visiting our website at www.bvmsports.com. Your thoughts will help us take BVM Sports to a whole new level. Thank you very much. And now let's get into it. The NCAA tournament's Final Four is now set, and the second half of the NBA season is underway following some trade deadline movement. We will cover everything for you in today's show, starting with the Final Four. Scott, Houston versus Baylor, number 2 versus number 1. Houston's first time getting there since 1984, and Baylor with just 2 losses on the season. Who will get to the championship game?
Yeah, Luke, I expected Baylor to be a Final Four team all season, and I've said as much on this show, but I can't say the same for Houston. You know, I sat in on Houston head coach Kelvin Sampson's media availability last week, obviously before their Sweet 16 and Elite 8 wins, and no matter what was asked of him, he found a way to mention rebounding, and that's where the Cougars are excellent. They've out-rebounded their opponents by at least 9 in each of their tournament wins so far, and they're constantly getting second and third looks. If Houston can control the glass, they have a real shot of knocking off Baylor, because that is an area of concern for the Bears. Arkansas just outboarded Baylor, and so did Wisconsin in the round of 32. But that's really the only path to victory that I see here for Houston. I said last week that I just simply don't know who the best player for the Baylor Bears is, and a week and 2 wins later, I'm still unsure, because they have 3 to 4 guys who have legitimate cases for that title. MaCio Teague propelled Baylor to a win over Arkansas with 22 points, but Davion Mitchell, a.k.a. Donovan Mitchell Jr., and first-team All-American Jared Butler were both right there in double figures. You know, and again, Flagler and Mullet Meyer are both instant offense off the bench. I expected Illinois to be in this position in place of Houston, but Baylor will have earned this opportunity to play for a title. I expect them to advance to Monday's national championship.
I mean, yeah, Scott, you mentioned it. Houston, the best chance that they really have is they've been dominant on the boards, great with offensive rebounding. And as far as Baylor is concerned, the only place where you think that they might be a little lacking is in their front court, considering how great, like you said, those guards are. That's where they're going to try and hurt Baylor, and that's where you have to expect it. But also, you know, Matthew Meyer has been such an X factor for the Bears, you know, not just this whole season, but in particular in the tournament. He comes in off the bench and gives them great minutes. He always seems to be around the ball or making a play. He's going to be the huge X factor in this game. And also this defense. You mentioned that Baylor hasn't been great on the boards, but overall their defense is unbelievable, and they could take it to a whole nother level. They had 6 steals and 14 turnovers against Wisconsin, 8 steals and 16 turnovers forced against Villanova, 9 steals and 15 turnovers against Arkansas. I mean, this is an elite defense going up against another elite defense in Houston. The question is going to be, can Quentin Grimes, Marcus Sasser, Dejan Giroux, those great guards for Houston, can they match up with Baylor? And in particular, I'm excited for it looks like there will be a Davion Mitchell versus Quentin Grimes, you know, matchup, and they're going to be guarding against each other. I think Mitchell has the upper hand, obviously, in that one, but Grimes is dangerous, and he's been great for Houston in this tournament.
Right, like you guys both mentioned, I do think Houston is going to provide a great challenge to the Baylor Bears. They hold teams to 28% shooting from deep, and obviously we know Baylor's 3-ball is their strong suit. Houston has shot takers and shot makers and athleticism to match, but where we've seen Baylor really get their advantage in this NCAA tournament so far has been their fast break game, using their size. Every time they get the chance, they push the floor, they throw a lob, they knock down a transition 3. I feel like a broken record talking about them, because every time I'm saying the same thing. They're just so good at what they do, and they have the size to make Houston struggle. Houston's tallest contributor on the floor is Justin Gorham at 6'7". Baylor has 3 guys 6'8" or taller that play significant minutes. I think Baylor has the edge and comes out on top in this one. But now the other Final Four game is between Gonzaga, who has been dominating the tournament at beating one of Scott's favorite teams, USC, by nearly 20, and they'll now face 11-seeded UCLA, who played a first 4 game earlier on, and now they're in the Final Four. Matt, who will get a bid to the national championship?
I mean, I got to go with Gonzaga. I think every single episode since the tournament started. All of us have been saying Gonzaga, and they're the best team in the country. They have a chance to make history. They've just been dominant. I mean, they're holding teams to under 65 points in the tournament. They've been averaging over 85. Their point differential is around 23. It's just unbelievable. And you might say that they've had a fairly easy road, especially because Iowa, Kansas, and Virginia were all taken out before they had to go up against Gonzaga. But it doesn't matter. I really thought USC could at least throw, a punch, especially when you have the Mobley brothers. But Gonzaga came out right away, forced turnovers, and USC was never able to come back. Credit UCLA for getting to the Final Four from being the first four in. I didn't think they'd beat Michigan State, but Mick Cronin has had those guys playing with grit, and they just have come up with big wins and big moments, and their guys have been unbelievable. I love the story, but it ends in the Final Four, Gonzaga to the finals.
I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about this matchup without mentioning this and how spectacular Johnny Juzang was on Tuesday night.
Oh,
the Bruins got off – it's just unbelievable. The Bruins got off to a slow start, but Juzang single-handedly kept them in it, scoring 18 of their first 24 points. He missed about 2 minutes of game action after his ankle got twisted up pretty badly, but then he returned to hit contested shot after contested shot to put UCLA over the top. He finished with 28 on 11 of 19 shooting. And one of just the gutsiest tournament performances I've seen in some time. He scored more than half of the Bruins' points for the game. But, for UCLA to knock off Gonzaga, they'll need a similar performance from Juzang. And Jamie Jaquez Jr. has to score more than 4 points than the 4 points he scored against Michigan because Gonzaga is an all-time great team. I don't know if you haven't heard it before, but you're hearing it now for maybe the 100th time. And the Zags have a legitimate big three. Drew Timme, Corey Kispert, and Jalen Suggs combined for 49 points in their blowout win over USC, which Matt alluded to. And that's just what those three are capable of. The Zags make you turn it over. They're skilled 1 through 5. They're obviously exceptionally coached by Mark Few. It'll take an all-time performance from UCLA to knock off an all-time team like Gonzaga. The Bulldogs are obviously my pick to win it all, and I've seen absolutely nothing to change my mind.
And Drew Timme's playing out of his mind in the tournament.
Out of his mind. The things that he was doing, really making Evan Mobley look like a freshman. I just really didn't expect that from him. It's really the stash. I think
it is living his best life. Living his best life right now.
Timme is part of the reason that Gonzaga has shown why they're the consensus #1 team in the nation, wire to wire this season. Yeah. There's no more questions about the Bulldogs to be answered. In the tournament, they're outscoring their opponents per possession more than they did in the West Coast Conference this season. There should be no more talk about who they play because they're proving it doesn't matter. They are just that good. UCLA has gone on an incredible run in this tournament and shown why March is so magical. But I'd argue that the last two teams Gonzaga beat by 20 points, which were Creighton and USC, are better than UCLA. So I don't see the Bruins getting it done. I just think Gonzaga is too unstoppable. This has been their year, and I plan to see it continue along that path. But if we pick these games correctly, that'll lead to a Gonzaga and Baylor national title game, which I know I picked. You guys had Illinois in over Baylor, but that's okay, maybe next year. One thing we did all agree on, though, is Gonzaga winning it all. If they get Baylor in the national title game, Scott, has your opinion at all changed, or will Gonzaga be crowned champions? I know you touched on it a little already.
For sure. No, I fully expect Gonzaga to be the 2021 undefeated national champions. I do believe that Baylor kind of, provides the biggest challenge to Gonzaga, obviously with their 3-guard lineup, the 2 All-Americans and whatnot. But Gonzaga is just too well coached. They're too athletic. They're too skilled. Again, 1 through 5. I don't know if the Baylor Bears, Matt has alluded to maybe their issues in the front court. I don't know if the Baylor Bears will have an answer, for Drew Timme, in that pain as skilled as he is. So, I expect Gonzaga here to make history and continue this train rolling, capping it off with a national championship.
This was a matchup we should have gotten earlier in the season. I think it was supposed to be in Indianapolis as well. So hopefully we'll get to see that this year. I mean, obviously, the two best teams from start to finish, Gonzaga 1, Baylor 2. Like I said earlier and what Scott mentioned as well, front court is probably the one issue that Baylor has, and that's nothing against Vital. Vital has been unbelievable. Yeah. But I just don't see anyone that can stop Drew Timme the way that he's playing. Give me Gonzaga as the national champions and making history.
Absolutely. That's a game I would love to see. There's so much depth and top-tier talent on both sides, but you just have to give the edge to the side with the NBA players and the best player in the country in Jalen Suggs. Nothing's changed for me. Gonzaga has too many good players to completely shut down. So, I mean, if Baylor focuses on Suggs, it's going to be Timmy or Kispert or Ayayi or someone else from their plethora of talent hurting the Bears. This has been Gonzaga's season through and through. And like I said, I expect it to stay that way. Scott, I saw you giving me a little look when I said Suggs is the best player in the country. Explain.
Yeah, I was just a bit confused because I'm not 100% sure, but I want to say that I think I've heard out of your mouth say that Cade Cunningham kind of has that title. Is that changed in recent weeks, or is that a belief that you've always held?
No, it is absolutely something that has changed in recent weeks. When Jalen Suggs gets into the Elite Eight game and puts up 18, 10, and 7 on a
he just damn near dropped a triple-double.
Exactly. And that's a nightly thing. He is just stuffing the stat sheet every night. He has completely changed my mind in that he is the best player in the country, and he is just a freshman. The NBA is going to be in good hands for a long time following this draft. And speaking of, let's transition over to the NBA, where the trade deadline struck this past week, and we did see some major changes take place with a couple of standout players finding new homes. Matt, which team do you think improved the most at the deadline?
You know, there were a lot of great trades, some interesting ones. I went with the Nuggets and them getting Gordon Hayward. Also, JaVale McGee, not to the same level.
Matt, the Nuggets got Aaron Gordon. I think you misspoke. You said Gordon Hayward instead, Aaron Gordon.
Oh my goodness,
No worries, you got it. We know who you're talking about.
I know all the Gordons. I always mess up the Gordons. Aaron Gordon going to the Nuggets, and then also JaVale McGee was a nice little pickup as well.
Yeah.
Not just because of the offense. I mean, obviously we know that Aaron Gordon is an unbelievable athletic player. He's great on offense. He can score a lot of different ways. But in particular, this is huge for the Nuggets in their defense. And the size of Gordon, he's 6'8", 235 pounds, can guard multiple positions. In Orlando this year, the defense for Orlando was 2.5 points better per 100 possessions with him on the court. He is a plus 1.88 defensive real plus minus, which is 5th among power forwards in the league this year. And this is a team with the Nuggets that has clearly had amazing offensive firepower, but they were hurting losing Jeremy Grant and Plumlee during the offseason, and this replaces that, and I think it's an overall upgrade as well. And
Matt, I like that you mentioned Aaron Gordon's defensive stats, because I think those really fly under the radar. He's definitely not known for his defense, and I like that you bring up those numbers, because he truly does he brings value to a defense, and that's not something people are talking about enough.
No, absolutely. And the whole point of the trade, in my opinion, the Nuggets had offense. I mean, Nikola Jokic can score for 30 any night. Jamal Murray, if he plays like he did in the playoffs last season, could go for 50. And let's not forget Michael Porter Jr. I mean, that guy is unbelievable.
Who went off on Tuesday night.
Exactly. So they don't need offense. They need defense. They need post presence to help give Jokic a break on defense and allow him to focus on his offensive side of the game, where he's going to drop a triple-double if you allow him. And bringing in those guys and upgrading from last season, it allows them not only to improve their defense, but also on the offensive side, with the ability that Jokic has to play outside of the paint and be a distributor and run the offense through him. That means that you could have a lineup where Aaron Gordon and JaVale McGee are out there with Jokic, and it creates this unbelievable, big man type of game where normally
huge lineup.
It's a huge lineup, and usually you go small ball, but in that situation you go big, and it's going to be interesting to see how teams try and combat that. So I love what the Nuggets did with Gordon. We'll have to wait and see if they're going to be a playoff team. It's going to really rely on if Jamal Murray can recreate what he did last year in the postseason, obviously making some amazing games and helping them get back to the Western Conference Finals.
People put too much hate on JaVale McGee's name. He's always on Shaqtin' and a Fool.
He's got 3 championships.
And he's kind of done it to himself. But he's a winner. He's an elite athlete. He will be a great rim protector. He is the exact opposite player of Nikola Jokic. So those two next to each other is going to be something to watch. I'm actually very excited to watch the Nuggets moving forward.
Yeah, agreed, Matt. I think the Nuggets obviously got better, and I think addressing that front court to one, take some pressure off Jokic and allow him to just, play more free within his offensive game is going to be it's going to pay big dividends for them in the postseason. But the Chicago Bulls improved the most at the deadline? Most obviously because they added an all-star, Nikola Vucevic, to a front court that was below average at best. But, as I talked about on the From Deep podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts, the Bulls are also big winners from beyond this season because they sent a message to Zach LaVine, a bona fide star in his prime, that the franchise is willing to put pieces around him that he can win with. It hasn't looked good through 2 games, I can admit. But Vooch has put up 21 and 9 on efficient shooting nights in both of his games with the Bulls thus far. And I'm confident that Billy Donovan, head coach, will figure out a way for Zach LaVine and Vooch to maximize their potential on the floor together. It'll take some time, as I just alluded to, but the Bulls now have 2 all-stars, which is something only a few teams around the league can say. And, I believe they'll make some noise in a playing situation and even, perhaps, pull an upset, obviously depending on the matchup. But at worst, Chicago is now just one free agency signing away from being legitimate Eastern Conference title contenders. And that's something, obviously, I wouldn't even have fixed my mouth to say, a few, weeks, months, even a few years ago. That is a big deal. Chicago improved vastly for the present and the future. So, obviously, that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I do like that pickup. I think Vucevic, because he was in Orlando, is probably a little underrated, similar to, Aaron Gordon.
Right.
Great move. And honestly, to your point, Scott, I didn't really know what Chicago was going to do because they had potential in some young guys, but LaVine is a little bit older, even though he still is also very young. Do you trade him and get a bunch of draft assets, or do you try and build around him? I respect the Bulls for trying to make the quicker move to being back to the Chicago Bulls that we've known for so long.
Right. And they kept the majority of their young guys. They kept Larry Martin, and they kept Pat Williams. They unloaded on Wendell Carter Jr., who's been underwhelming in his time in Chicago. And
I didn't even get to mention, obviously, the addition of Daniel Tice, who the Bulls got for basically nothing, who's going to be a more than serviceable backup center, to Vucevic.
Yeah, I got you, Scott. I'll be talking about that a little bit in my bit here. But honestly, we're going to sound very much the same. I hate to say it, but the Chicago Bulls dominated the trade deadline.
Wow.
It was a team that has put themselves at least in consideration for a playoff spot, mostly on the shoulders of Zach LaVine, and they went and got him another all-star to play alongside him. LaVine and Vucevic are 2 of 4 players this season, averaging 24 points per game on 40% three-point shooting with 6 attempts or more per game. That's elite scoring. They are 2 of 4, like I just mentioned. They showed LaVine that they want to play with him. They are willing to build around him, and they'll have a solid core now for years to come. This deadline shaped the Bulls for the next decade, in my opinion. Yep. And the smaller move that you didn't even mention here was Daniel Tice. That's going to go a long way for them as well. And people don't even recognize that. Tice was the starting center for the Celtics, and he gives you a little bit of everything. He can score it. He can assist it. He can rebound it. He's coming off a career year protecting the rim and in terms of block numbers. In a reserve role behind Vucevic, there's nothing more you can ask for. The Bulls have been struggling since the deadline, but it's probably just growing pains. The Bulls are the big winner at the deadline, in my opinion.
And one more bow on that. I mentioned that the Bulls are, just 1 star free agent signing away from, being legitimate Eastern Conference contenders. I'm just saying, but Chris Paul and Kawhi Leonard both have player options to become free agents after this season. If things don't work out for the second consecutive season in LA with the Clippers, Kawhi might be looking elsewhere, and, who knows with CP3 and, him or any really other, free agents that might be coming available this season. I think
that's a little rich. I think that's a little rich considering CP3 is on one of the best teams in the West. And,
yeah, it's optimistic to say the least. But Chicago is
block away from LeBron. So who knows if Kawhi
the East is the move. The Eastern Conference is the move.
You can see those Bulls fans getting their hopes up now that they got a couple decent players.
Giannis already signed. They got to move on to the next guy.
Exactly. And hey, the trade deadline also means the buyout market catching fire, and we did see some big signings there as well. Former Spurs big man LaMarcus Aldridge is headed. He's headlining that field by going to the Nets. Scott, which team, in your opinion, added the most important buyout market player?
Yeah, no buyout player will have a larger impact than Andre Drummond will for the Lakers. First off, in the short term, LeBron and Anthony Davis are obviously hurt and out of the lineup, leaving the Lakers to rely on role players to keep them afloat. Drummond is obviously a 2-time All-Star and the first player since Dennis Rodman to have 8+ seasons averaging 13+ rebounds per game. He's a rebounding specialist, a more than capable scorer due to his size and skill around the rim, who can produce double numbers for a team that just flat out needs it right now. That's the short term. The long-term impact will be Drummond's ability to play the 5 and allow Anthony Davis to play his natural power forward position when the Lakers decide to go big in the postseason. Schroeder, LeBron, Anthony Davis, Andre Drummond, and your choice of shooter is a championship caliber closing lineup with the Nuggets, Clippers, Mavs, and even the Blazers obviously improving out west. The Lakers had to as well, and they did. Drummond might also come in handy. This is a bit cheeky, but Drummond might also come in handy for a potential finals matchup with the Philadelphia 76ers to maybe put a body on Joel Embiid, but that might not work out too well either because Embiid has kind of owned Drummond in their matchups up to this date. But still,
it's not going to work. It's not going to work out.
A good move, nonetheless.
The Sixers need to get there. The Sixers need to get there, and that's not happening.
And I was going to say, Embiid's got a lot of real estate in Detroit because of those matchups against Drummond. And if it happens, he's going to have a lot of real estate out in LA. But I agree with you, Scott. I really do that Drummond was the big signing because of the stability. And just to reference your point with LeBron and AD out, the Lakers have a tough schedule. They play, besides, the obvious ones, they play Utah twice. They play the Clippers twice. They have Miami, Boston, Brooklyn, Charlotte, the New York Knicks twice, Portland, Denver, and Dallas twice to finish out this regular season. With LeBron and AD, I'm not worried about, half of those games. But with them out, this is a real worry for me, especially with a 7-game road series coming up. The Lakers could fall. And this year, with the way that the playoffs are set up, you want to stay above that 6th place, that 6th spot in the playoffs, because then you don't have to play in the play-in games. Drummond allows them to be as good, if not better, than most of the teams that they're going to see and give them a puncher's chance without LeBron and AD and keep their heads above water. And not just that, but I think people always seem to assume when you're talking about a buyout market, you tend to think, veterans that are on their kind of like their last legs, guys that will be able to contribute to a contending team, but they're not going to be unbelievable. I think LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin are good examples of that. DeAndre Drummond is 27. He's young. He's still technically in the prime of his life. He's a 2020 machine. Back when he was with Detroit, he averages 4 offensive rebounds a game this season. And for a Lakers team that needs it right now, it's going to be huge. Now they can allow Anthony Davis to continue to recover. LeBron, who's expected to be back in end of April, early May, he doesn't have to rush back. And this is going to be huge for the Lakers, especially with, I mentioned it, the Nuggets can go big. You have Nurkic in Portland. You have Rudy Gobert. There is talk that Boogie Cousins might head to the Clippers. They're still waiting to figure that out. If he does end up with the Clippers, that's another postman that you have to address, and it allows them to help out because obviously Montrezl Harrell has been great. But I also said this earlier, JaVale McGee has 3 championships. One of those is with the Lakers. Him and Dwight Howard last year were huge in the front court for that Lakers team. And to your point, Scott, it allows Anthony Davis to play his true position, which is power forward, where he really thrives and what he actually likes to play.
All these big men you're mentioning, Matt, are great. Excuse me, but let me remind you that the Milwaukee Bucks have the best big man in the league in Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they continue to build around him. In the buyout market, the Bucks went ahead and got Jeff Teague, and they filled a glaring need. They brought DJ Augustine aboard this offseason, and he really struggled. They ended up flipping him for PJ Tucker, which will be huge for the Bucks. But then they were again without a backup point guard. Teague fits that mold perfectly. He's been backing up Kemba Walker all year in Boston, shooting 46% from 3 and 84% from the free throw line.
Luke, I hate to cut you off. I just want to be clear.
Okay.
No, not actually. I just use it because you say it. But anyway, I just want to get this straight. Are you saying that Jeff Teague is the most important buyout player that's been picked up by a team?
I do, because I think it's 100% of need. And I'm actually talking about that right now.
Yeah, I'll let you finish.
If you would let me carry on.
I'll let you finish. That's absolutely ridiculous, but I'll let you finish and I'll get after you afterwards.
Like I said, he's shooting 46% from the three-point line, 84% from the free throw line, and in a limited minutes role, that's huge. When you're a bench guy, you're coming in off the bench, your whole point is to give your team a spark and fill the need while your top guys rest. Teague does that perfectly because he's going to space the floor. He's going to knock down open shots, and he has the experience and veteran leadership to know what pass to make, what shot to take, and which ones not to. This is another huge face that come the playoffs alongside PJ Tucker is going to pay huge dividends for the Bucks. And pairing him up with Coach Mike Budenholzer, who he had so much success with back in Atlanta, is huge.
So much success.
I love this move for the Bucks.
So much.
I'm very excited about it, and I hope Teague makes his debut on Wednesday, and we'll see. But now with some things shaken up, the league looks a little bit different in both the East.
Wait, hold on. We're not going past that, Luke. I don't know what you thought you were doing, but anyway, we're talking about Jeff Teague. Not only is this man only not even averaging 7 points per game this season, but you mentioned his 46% shooting from deep. That's on 1.5 3-point attempts a game. He's averaging more turnovers per game than 3-pointers made this season. So again, Jeff Teague isn't even going to be a part of a closing lineup for the Milwaukee Bucks. He's strictly a bench player, so he can't be more important than Andre Drummond, who certainly is going to obviously start for the Lakers and possibly be a part of a closing lineup. I wouldn't even say he's more important than Blake Griffin, who, again, Blake Griffin has a chance of being a part of, a possible Nets closing lineup. So to say that Jeff Teague is the most important buyout player,
I'm for Drummond. I already have explained why. But in Jeff Teague's defense, as maybe the second best in the buyout market, Boston was not a good situation.
He's backing up.
I think that they've shown – I mean, Evan Fournier gets traded there, and he's pulling Tony Snell numbers. I mean, it's not a good situation.
I'm not sure what this has to do with Jeff Teague.
I'm saying that you've seen Blake Griffin go from Detroit and come to Brooklyn, and all of a sudden he's dunking again.
Is Detroit the same situation as Boston, Matt?
Boston is not a good situation this year, Scott.
They're not.
Has Boston been a good situation?
I asked you a direct question, Matt. I asked you a direct question. Is Detroit the same situation as Boston?
Matt, before you answer him, let me say something. Scott, usually when we talk about NBA ideas, you seem to kind of miss the mark. And I understand you're not an NBA first guy. So let me explain. I'm talking about fit and roll. Jeff Teague shoots 1.5 threes a game, and he knocks them down at a 46% clip. That's
making
great.
less than 1 3-pointer a game.
That is what he's going to have to do in Milwaukee. He's going to come in, and if you can knock down 1 or 2 3-pointers in your limited minutes role, that's exactly what you're supposed to do as a backup. He will be a top-tier backup point guard option, and the guy that come playoffs will be part of a championship closing lineup because he has been there. He's had that experience in Atlanta.
So Jeff Teague is going to be part of the Bucks closing lineup.
He is a true veteran player. He is someone who I don't think he's going to be their first option, but when it comes down to it, he's
not. He's obviously not.
When it comes down to it, you want those top-tier options because you can absolutely rely on him.
And Luke, let me give you a newsflash. Jeff Teague isn't that. That's why the Orlando Magic just waived him. Obviously, he's not that.
The Orlando Magic waived him because they're going youth movement. And Jeff Teague is not that. The Bucks added him because he can be a contributor to a title team. So again, you're missing the whole idea.
And you just said that he's going to be part of a closing lineup for the Bucks. So you're missing the entire point, which is probably part of the
I'm not going that far.
Probably part of the reason why you picked the Bucks to win the finals the last 2 years, and we know how that worked out. So
Scott, I'm not going that far. I am not going that far, but you have to admit that the Boston situation is not great. It seems like there's an issue with the locker room, whether it comes from Danny Ainge in the front office or the coach. All I'm saying is with the Jeff Teague thing, obviously you have to hold him to some accountability for what he did in Boston. Yeah. But at the same time, in Milwaukee, with a new scenery, new atmosphere, a coach that he, to Luke's point, has a relationship with, I think Jeff Teague could be something off the bench, better than what DJ Augustine was.
And may I remind you, going back a few episodes, Scott made this same kind of comparison with Carson Wentz, going back to Indianapolis and pairing up with his old coach. So if you're going to say something about, Carson Wentz is going to be good in Indianapolis with his new coach, I kind of want you to hold that same standard for Jeff Teague.
That probably is the most ridiculous thing you've said today, and you've already said a handful of ridiculous.
It's not, because those are the exact same situations.
They're the exact same situations.
Except Jeff Teague is probably better than Carson Wentz was when Carson Wentz was an Eagle.
The exact same situations. You keep digging yourself in a hole. I really should let Matt get you on this one because his face is telling everything that really needs to be said at this point. Just a couple things. You just said Jeff Teague was better than Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was an MVP candidate in Philadelphia. Has Jeff Teague ever been the best player on the team? Absolutely not.
Carson Wentz was the worst pocket passer in the league. Jeff Teague is not the worst in the league at anything.
You said that Jeff Teague was better than Carson Wentz was when he was in Philadelphia. And I just said Carson Wentz was the MVP candidate while he was in Philadelphia. We know what he did last season. And again, we're talking about football and basketball. The situation is obviously not the same. We're talking about a quarterback, a cornerstone of a franchise versus a bench player who just got waived by one of the worst teams in the league. The situations couldn't be more different. So
but
again,
the Colts are bringing in Wentz so that they can do what?
To win. To improve the quarterback position, to improve from Phillip Rivers, to get upgrade over Phillip Rivers.
Why do you think the Bucs are bringing in Jeff Teague?
What?
Why do you think the Bucs are bringing in the Jeff Teague?
Because they needed a backup point guard.
Colts are doing it to win. The Bucs are bringing in him because he wins. He's a winner.
Win.
Oh gosh.
He's a winner.
When did he do that?
The best team in the NBA 3 years straight with him as their starting point guard in Atlanta.
When was this?
This is when Mike Budenholzer was coaching Atlanta. I don't have
what year?
Let me check my notebook.
Was it earlier?
I don't keep a log.
Let me check. Was it earlier? Was it before Carson Wentz was an MVP candidate in Philadelphia? Because you seem to dismiss that because it was a long time ago. So which one is it?
We have to move this on. We could.
Yeah,
we
right.
Could
Yes, move it on, please. Move it on.
I could sit here and do this all day long with you, but we just simply don't have the time.
I agree.
So now with things shaken up, the league looks a little bit different in both the East and the West. Real quick, Matt, does this change your opinion in terms of your East or West Conference favorites?
No, it doesn't. I mean, especially out in the East, it's still Bucks, Brooklyn, 76ers. Injuries can play a part in that. In the West, again, barring any the injuries, LeBron coming back, it's still, Lakers at the top. I give a shout out to the Nuggets. Maybe they can make a run to the Western Conference Finals, but it hasn't changed enough yet for me to actually be confident in saying that.
Yeah, I'm with you, Matt. This is an overwhelming no in terms of, changing my perception of the favorites in both conferences. Fully healthy, obviously, the Lakers will win the West. And, again, fully healthy, the 76ers, I still believe, will shock Brooklyn in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Sixers still have the MVP, more than capable defenders to mitigate Brooklyn's big three. And George Hill actually was a sneaky, a solid pickup, another ball handler, another plus defender, to add to that rotation. So, none of these buyout moves have really changed my minds on who I believe will represent the respective conferenses.
Okay, Scott, I'm sorry. You said the 76ers have the who?
Capable defenders.
And before that, you said something about MVP?
Yeah, Joel Embiid. Yeah, he was the MVP
when you miss a month to 2 months of the season, you're no longer in the MVP conversation. And I think throughout this,
obviously, I was talking about before his injury, he was the biggest.
I don't care about before his injury because now he's hurt.
Obviously, you don't.
And I think you've proven yourself as a true Milwaukee Bucks hater. I don't think you've ever said one good word about them on this show. So anything you say about them, people, please take it with a grain of salt. And you're obviously a 76ers
fan. Audience, please take whatever Luke says about his favorite team, the Milwaukee Bucks, with a grain of salt. Again, reminder, he picked the Milwaukee Bucks to win the title the last 2 seasons, and we all know how that finished up. Go ahead.
And Scott's a LeBron James follower, and now he's a big-time Lakers fan. We know those types of people. We know those types of people. Now, what the Bucks did to me this offseason, adding Holiday, and then this season adding Tucker and Teague is way more important and bigger than anything anyone else has done. Adding these so important pieces around Giannis is exactly what they've done. They've given him the pieces that he needs. It's obviously going to be difficult going against Kyrie, KD, Harden playing like a true MVP candidate, but I think it's doable. I still got the Bucks as my favorite in the East. And in the West, it's still a toss-up to me. Very interesting in the West, a lot of good teams. My opinion is still being formed in terms of who is my favorite there. But as we wrap up, MLB Opening Day is today, so we, of course, have to make our way to early World Series predictions. Real quick, Scott, who do you have in the World Series and who do you have winning it?
Bit of homerism here, but the Chicago White Sox are
the first time we've seen that.
Are a World Series team. They have the roster and went out this offseason and obviously brought in the World Series winning manager and obviously Tony La Russa, even in his older age. The rotation and the bullpen are deep. Jose Abreu, Tim Anderson are stars. And the Sox will get Eloy back just in time for a pennant run when he recovers from pectoral surgery. In the NL, the Dodgers are just stacked again and should win the National League. But the White Sox of Chicago are my World Series pick for the first time since 2005. Let's do it.
I'm thrilled that baseball season is back. It's beer and brat season, being a homegrown Wisconsin guy. Milwaukee Brewers, I love them. And as much as I wish I could pull the homerism like you, Scott, I'm going to go Dodgers-Yankees. I think the Dodgers, similar to what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were able to do, they not only retained all of that great talent they had to win the World Series last year, they added to it, and that pitching rotation they have is impressive. Yankees, I think, finally get over that injury bug that has been just destroying their seasons as of recently. And I think that the Yankees pull it off. But there's a lot of great teams. I'm excited to see the Rays, Blue Jays, Padres, and hopefully the Brewers can pull out the win in the division and be in the playoffs. Just happy to have baseball back.
Absolutely. I'll keep it short and sweet. I got the Padres and Yankees, and give me the Padres winning it all. People doubt them because of the Dodgers, but I think fans will be surprised this year. We're excited for the MLB season to be here, and we'll hit a little bit more on it as the year goes on. But enjoy MLB opening day. Enjoy both the women's and men's NCAA national championship games. And next time we see you here, there will be lots of sports to dissect. From myself, Scott Procter, and Matt Morris, this has been Chalk Talk.